All right, everyone. You can go ahead and take your seats if you are lucky enough to find one. It looks like we still have a couple here, though, and one over there. So if you want a seat, there are still some around. Anyways, my name is Nathan Soltz. I'll be chairing this panel. I'm not going to take too long on this because you can see my biography in the booklet. But just briefly, I'm the chair of our 2nd Congressional District. It's Oregon's largest congressional district by far. It covers 19.5 counties. It's the size of the state of Missouri. I've been in this position since our last reorganization in 2019. Before that, I was the vice chair of the Jackson County Democrats. Born and raised in Medford. I was the campaign manager for the state representative race down in Medford in 2018. I've been doing this in some capacity since I was 15, with the party directly since I was 17. So I'm really excited to be with you all here today. I'm really excited about this turnout. Are Adele and Mark Cerny in the room? Are they here? No. I wanted to give them a shout out. They'll be getting an award later tonight. They're two of our really incredible leaders from out in Grant County, and they'll be getting an award tonight for their work in rural organizing. But again, I have the easy job here. I'm just here to make sure that you get your questions answered and they answer your questions. So now we'll just go ahead and get started with some introductions from the panelists themselves, and we'll start right here with Carina.
Nathan, the mic is on.
What?
The mic is on. You can just take it off.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Carina Miller. I am from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I was raised there, and I went to the University of Oregon. I was formerly a tribal council representative for Warm Springs, serving as the WASCO representative for the last 3 years. And I currently am a Columbia River Gorge Commissioner and the Native American Caucus Chair.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam Parkinson. I am the Western Regional Director for the Association of State Democratic Committees within the DNC. ASDC for short. We work with state parties, make sure they're prepared for elections. I come from the state party world myself, originally from Rapid City, South Dakota, so I know a lot about being a Democrat in a really red area, and I'm really excited to be in Oregon today.
Hey folks, my name is Cheyenne Davis. I'm the National Training Director for the DNC. Our training department is fondly called the Best Practices Institute, so if anyone's familiar with that, BPI team in the house. I live in DC, but I come from Kansas. Grew up there, got my start in politics there, so rural organizing is near and dear to my heart. Thank you for having me.
Hello, I'm Paul Evans. Hello, can you hear me back? I'm Paul Evans, I represent House District 20, which is West Salem, South Salem, Monmouth Independence, with some areas in between. I'm not truly rural by most definitions of the term, but Monmouth Independence are much more rural than urban, and I grew up in a relatively rural family background. Looking forward to the conversation, hopefully even engaging in some dialogue and debate.
So I actually think you guys can keep the microphone at the table so you don't have to run it back and forth. Can everybody hear me in the room? And that's going to be picked up on the microphone.
Yes.
And Brian, even though he's just our tech guy, also has some experience. He was one of our staffers on the campaign that I managed. I just want to make sure that you all know that Brian's here as well.
Sorry, first,
yes.
Can we move the podium back possibly so that everybody can hear you?
Oh, yeah. This is what Carina looks like. Yes, so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. So the first question, all these questions I asked for from our friends in the Frontier Democrat community, and got some questions, and I kind of tried to combine them and make them as condensed as we could. So the first question is, how do Democrats organize in red communities where they fear retribution for even being identified as Democrats?
Good question.
I'm going to start that with a little bit of an answer that sounds a little bit like a joke, but it's not, and then actually a more, hopefully more scholarly answer. First of all, as somebody who's literally most of my family will never vote for me because they are Republicans. Some of my family, by the way, voted for Obama in 2008 because they believed it was time for significant change. So they're not necessarily in love with being a Republican, but they're in love with their lifestyle and their perspective. who I get teased a lot, but I remind them that if Jesus were walking the streets today, he'd be a Democrat. He was a carpenter, which means he would have been a part of a union, and he was involved in helping people, and he loved people far more than he judged them. And I use that a little bit of humor, but the point is, I think sometimes Democrats automatically feel on the defensive, when in fact, the heart and soul of what the Democratic Party used to be about, and I believe still is believing that government can be used from time to time to help lift people up, and the government can be used to make sure people are protected. And I approach it through a particular frame that I call the guarantee, or the Pioneer Compact, which has 4 elements: guaranteed opportunity, a safe environment, protection of our basic rights to think, to act, to live, to love without fear, and to promote the future while providing in the present. I put it back on them with a philosophical and heartfelt perspective, and then see where they go. Because I'm done with, oh, Democrats don't believe this. Yes, Will Rogers is right. We're not the most organized political party. We are Democrats. But it's because we believe that people can do good, and we want to work together. And so I think sometimes when you stand up to bullies, they don't know what to do. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with everything the representative said. I've heard this a million different times, a million different ways, from a million different people back home, I will say, and I still, through the programs that I run through our Best Practices Institute, am connecting with people across the country who are in this same situation. And where I always start is you need to build community within your party. This means building up the infrastructure of your county organizations. That means recruiting precinct committee people. It means building relationships not just within the Democratic Party infrastructure, but with the community organizations that are allies of yours, as well as just the neighborhood organizations that you're a part of naturally. You can have those sidebar conversations when you start building good relationships within your own community. It can be a slow build, right? You don't have to come out right away with a big old billboard in the yard that says, hey, I'm a Democrat, come be mean to me, right? Which most of the time is what you're feeling if you're in an area where you feel like you're totally alone. But you are most of the time shocked to find that two houses down, they're Democrats too. Who knew? And they would never know if you didn't start building a little bit of an infrastructure. So comb those community calendars, look for events that you can actually attend as a group. Get you a little table, go to the parade, have a float in the parade. These are quick, easy ways to kind of start letting people in the community know that Democrats are there, that you exist as an organization. You can even do some letters to the editor that can spark interest, right? But when you're out talking to folks, you don't have to start with, I'm a Democrat and you have to believe what I believe. Start with the issues where you can match up on. Number one, healthcare, right? People are aligning with us more on that issue than anything else. Polling says that, our door-to-door conversations say that. So listen to them, find the issues that they care about, connect with them on that, and then slowly just start building an infrastructure within your community. That's what I'd say.
I'd start with just being proud. Be proud to be a Democrat in your communities. I think if you live in a rural community, you've all come across somebody else who's probably said, "Oh, I didn't know there were any other Democrats here."
Yeah.
Stick up for yourself when somebody starts, acting like saying they're a Republican and talking about certain issues. I'm sure you have similar values to everybody else in your community, and they'll be surprised when they find out you're a Democrat. Don't be afraid to lead with it. Like Cheyenne was saying, healthcare matters to everybody. Education is on the minds of everyone. So lead with those kind of things. You'll start to see that people are close to the same page, and it's not just the social issues leading everything. Just be proud to be a Democrat.
I think maybe for me, I'm not necessarily like a strategic organizer. I'm more of coming from more of a grassroots perspective, and so I understand the need to build relationship, and understand the need to build, the kind of base for volunteers or for democratic organizations in your county and your communities. But for me, there's more of a sense of urgency because the communities of color where I come from are actually the majority of the people in our communities. And yet all of our electeds are not people of color. Our representation is not people of color. And so I recognized what it was like being a Native person growing up, not really having hope or not really having faith that any party, or basically knowing that any avenue I was going to go down in organizing was going to take time. And we don't have time. So it's hard for me because it is about having these conversations with people you know who are more conservative, who are Republican, about the humanity, about the things that overlap. But it's also about pushing those conversations. Because as a person of color, having to constantly debate the humanness of my tribe or the political identity or educate everyone on the history, let alone learn the history for myself, is exhausting. And it's not sustainable for people like me, which is why you don't see as many people of color in these spaces. So for me, I would say be proud that you're a Democrat, organize in your community, but help uplift those marginalized voices. Recognize the exhausting amount of work we have to do just to even be in these spaces and be educated, to have these kinds of panels and conversations, and where do we even start? Because we are still at the very beginning, and my community is dying, my community is suffering.
And before we move on, I do see that Adele has joined us back there. And like I said, she's getting the award, her and her husband, for excellence in rural organizing. So thank you. So the next question is, building off of that, how do you recruit Democratic candidates in these areas where it's hard to even be identified as a Democrat?
So, my seat was held by Republicans pretty much forever before me. Vicki Berger was there for 12 years, and in parts of the district, I'm the first Democrat ever to represent part of the district. So, again, the rural lens in this case is not as much as if I was living right next to Idaho. However, in our district, what I've tried to do is three things. Number one, I've been in and out of elected office since I was 18 years old, so I tried to remember the lessons of local government and tried to ensure that at the state level I don't put on the lens of the state legislature only, and make sure that the local folks at the school board level, fire board level, city level, that they feel empowered. And some of those happen to be Republicans, some of those happen to be Democrats, some of those happen to be whatever. But try to ensure that that group of leaders feel a part of the process more than perhaps they might have. The second thing is, I started about 2 years ago now. We have a group of folks on first Sundays of every month, although technically it's generally moved to the second Sundays, but nonetheless, we call it the First Sundays group. There's about 18 folks that I'm trying to mentor and teach and pass on everything I know so that I'm making myself obsolete. And again, I don't know who will run for office, some of them already have, but doing everything I can to pass on what I can from the position, knowing that the job of being an elected representative is a temporary gig. And the third thing that I think you need to do is recruiting. You need to always keep an eye open for groups that, because of opportunities, that they're looking for something. So I'll give you an example. Right now in the United States, there is a resurgence of veterans getting involved in political life. The last 2 years of this president have actually brought more veterans to the forefront of wanting to get involved than I really thought were. So I'm also working on trying to train veterans on advocacy, not strictly on a partisan basis, but if they are moved to act right now because of what's going wrong with this president, then even if they happen to be a Republican, they are kind of Republican as opposed to the Trump kind of Republican. So trying to find people in the community that have a desire to lead, have a proven, demonstrated willingness to be passionately involved in their community, and then try to basically build that next team up as a personal responsibility. That's my goal.
Definitely want to echo the building of institutional knowledge within, if you are someone who has been at this a while, building out your own organizations or running for office, building up the bench of the next folks that are going to take that role or even run for another office is so incredibly important. I always talk about this because candidate recruitment was a pretty difficult job back in the day when I was in Kansas. But I also was a data director in a former life. And I would put together these little one-pagers for every district with the DPI, the Democratic Performance Index, which looks at the average performance of Democratic candidates in that same type of race in past election cycles. And we'd get these races with, a 20 DPI for a district, and people are like, what's the problem here? And I'm like, we haven't run candidates because no one wants to run there, right? But we'll never build that DPI. If you want to look at it from that perspective, we'll never build that DPI if we aren't running candidates in those districts. And this is also a great opportunity to build the bench, to find diverse candidates, because we know that that brings out more of the community. I mean, look at 2018 with the House. We have the most diverse House of Representatives we've ever had. And those candidates can win because they have a different message. So don't be afraid to run somebody a diverse candidate in one of those districts if they are, connected with their communities. My fellow panelist was talking about this just a few minutes ago. I mean, we need to build a bench in every single way possible and at every level of elections that we can. So being the person who brings folks into this, you are the ambassadors of your organizations in your communities. So be the people who ask people to run for office, and make sure there's somebody running every time, because we're never going to get better in those districts if we don't at least have someone running every time.
I really want to echo what Cheyenne said there with getting somebody to run in every single race every single year. It's important to contest every election to remind Democrats there is somebody else there, and there's somebody standing up and speaking out and having a voice for the community. I've spent the last 4 years at the South Dakota Democratic Party, and it's probably no surprise to anybody in this room that South Dakota is a really red state. We have a county that in 2016 only cast 16 votes for Hillary Clinton. We did not run a candidate there at the legislative level. We didn't contest any county races. We were concerned about it. One of our U.S. senators is from that county and was running for re-election, so we didn't bother. We realized in 2018 that we needed to contest across the entire state. Every 2 years in South Dakota, all 105 state legislative seats are up, so we made it a goal to have a candidate run for every single seat. It took some persuading, and we definitely had some people who were sacrificial lambs, but they knew they were going out there because they were going to be, they were, for such a long time, Democrats didn't have anybody to vote for in those areas. So people stood up and ran for those offices. And in that county where only 16 people voted for Hillary Clinton, we found a very nice older woman who decided she was going to put her name on the ballot, she wasn't going to do much, and she was just going to be proud to be a Democrat on the ballot. She got 42% of the vote. It's really important to show up and give people a voice, and I think that's where it starts. It's going to take a long time to change in some areas, but it starts with somebody getting on the ballot right away.
I mean, it's always going to be fun being the last one to answer because I say everything good, but I think I would add to that it's obvious in Oregon that the political power lies within the urban areas. So for me, I would say don't look away from rural issues and understand that they're not going to align with the things that are in the cities. Having experienced going door to door in a very conservative community several times next to the reservation, abortion is not what is on people's minds. Survival is. And so we have to shift the kind of things we're organizing about and recognize that people's values are vastly different, and we have to respect that, and we have to work with everybody. And sometimes it's not comfortable, and sometimes it feels like we're, pushing our values as a party, but rural Democrats are being left out. And it's hard even for me as a rural person, as a tribal person, to always trust that this party is going to be doing what's right by me. And I understand there's bigger power structures at play, but when you're trying to build that bench and you're trying to have people show up and it's hard for you to keep showing up, that's a problem.
Yeah, you can jump around. So the next question is, how do we canvass and campaign in areas where homes are far apart and traditional door knocking is inefficient?
Well, I door knock in those places, so I would say wear good shoes. And so I ran for school board in the 509J school district, and I was defeated. And we did go door to door, we did talk to Republicans, but this has been my entire experience going through the school district. I remember being in high school, and my civic economics teacher was not shy about being a Republican, and we talked about immigration, we talked about environment, we had all these debates. So to go into a public education system where it's okay for your educator to have racist and harmful opinions about 2/3 of the community that they're teaching in. You know, so that face-to-face connection, that is so important in these communities, because right now the numbers were 1,000 Democrats, 2,000 Republicans, 3,000 undecided in Jefferson County. Those are 3,000 people that if we can start organizing, if we can start getting people power, financial resources, really focusing on these rural campaigns, it can happen, and we can sway people with the authenticity of the leaders we're putting forward. But people have to show up in rural Oregon. It's not quite happening right now.
Meet voters where they are. I think we're moving towards a campaign world where digital is becoming very important, and you still need to pursue those digital opportunities, whether it be Facebook ads or other avenues. But in rural communities, we all know face-to-face and meeting somebody personally gets you a much better chance to get their vote. I'm sure you'll if you're knocking doors, you're gonna knock on a door and someone's gonna say, I haven't had a candidate at my door in 10 years. And there's a 50% chance you already have their vote just because you showed up. But meet them where they are in the community, whether that means a coffee shop, a feed store, a basketball tournament. Meet them where you are or where they are so you can be more efficient and you can talk to more voters.
100% echo those statements too. You have to take advantage of when the communities are gathering naturally, right? I would talk about combing your community calendars. Usually your local news station will have some kind of calendar of community events. Make sure you're there with a clipboard. Make sure all of your friends are there with a clipboard, right? Volunteer sign-up sheets. Make sure you're recruiting volunteers early in those communities. That means that you're phone banking in these chilly winter months, to Democrats in those areas, so that when summer rolls around, it's time to go knock some doors. Although I will say I've knocked in every single type of weather, and I'm sure many of you have too. You have a team in place of people who know their community, right? So that means early volunteer recruitment. That also reinforces the idea that you need to build those organizations in your community as a democratic organization within those rural areas early on. Just in terms of some tactics too, I like to do 2-person canvas teams. Usually I say 1-person canvas team because the more people, the more turfs you can hit. But a 2-person canvas team is good for rural because you can have a driver and a canvasser, and then that driver, send them with a phone bank list so they can be phone banking while the other one is knocking the door, right? And then I want to echo the digital piece. Digital is increasingly a way that folks, rural broadband is a real big issue, of course, but where you can meet people where they are online. When they can access the internet, which is just another reason we need more Democrats in office, right? And then, of course, phone banking is always a good use of time for rural communities, because I grew up on a gravel road, had to throw hay every morning before I ran down to the bus for my hour-long bus ride. That no one's knocking on my door, right? No one ever knocked on my door, so I can't even imagine how I would have felt to have somebody come knock on my door. So where you can't have that personal touch of the door-to-door, if you don't have the time, money, or resources to make sure you hit that, do some phone banking. Make sure they at least get a call. Those are also good times where the candidate themselves can call, if you get a rural call list together, because it's just a little bit more of a personal touch.
So I'm probably going to be not aligned with everybody at the table. I actually think that there are, in a rural area, it's sometimes important to know which doors not to knock at, and in some cases, what hours. I'll give you an example. We had a very energetic, passionate young field organizer come to my campaign in 2014, and he wanted to go to a particular part of Polk County that you just don't go to after 8 o'clock at night unless you have a reason to. And it isn't that there's a lot of crime, it's just that the folks that live there, they don't like visitors. It's just, that's where they're at. And he insisted, in Portland we go till 9 o'clock. I said, well, you probably shouldn't do that. So he comes back the next morning, and his eyes are about as big as saucers, and I'm like, all right, what happened? He's like, well, first of all, Kevin Hilliard says hello. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. Why were you at Kevin's house? Well, I was door knocking. I said, and what time? Well, it was 8:30. I said, all right, what happened? I got up on the porch, I started knocking, all of a sudden I heard the door open and a click.
Oh.
Was it his handgun? Yeah, I don't know what kind, it was big. I'm like, yeah, okay. What did he say? He said, tell Paul he's got my vote, but get the off my porch. So my point is that sometimes, and again, I understand why, the experts, the folks who are writing the big checks, the folks that have the expectations, they're saying you gotta do this and this and this and this. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and do lots of contact. I'm not saying you shouldn't, exactly what folks talk about, finding places where people are. But there are certain areas that everybody who's not born and raised and living in that district and the candidate need to recognize that if the candidate's saying, you know, these are some things you want to think about in this area, there might be something to that. And sometimes campaign school really puts lots of things in people's heads, and that's good. But in rural areas especially, I defer to the candidate knowing that area, and I think it's important that we listen to those concerns.
How can rural organizers and candidates focus on the entire community instead of just mid-sized or even small cities?
Well, I think we kind of talked about this a bit, right, with the different tactics we use to engage voters, meeting them where they are. This is, there are many ways to do voter contact. A lot of people disregard like radio now, but local radio stations are still really important in rural communities. So is the local coffee shop where there's an 8 a.m. unofficial coffee club. You know, you have the town stalwarts meeting every morning at 8 a.m. just to talk about what's going on, make friends, right? Build a community there. Because in larger areas within the rural community, right, there will always be like a good festival or a good parade, but maybe in the really small areas, there is just more unique options in terms of meeting more voters at once. So we talk about those kind of little coffee clubs, or maybe the bowling alley is a big hit. You never know. I have definitely canvassed at a bowling alley. Look for and that just gets back to, the representative was talking about that. I think we've all kind of hit on this a bit, but you have to have people who know their own community. That means volunteer recruitment early into those communities so that those folks can give you a gut check and say, you better not be going over there at 8:30 at night. They're gonna be pissed, right? You can actually know the community better by building that infrastructure early on in terms of volunteer recruitment and making sure that you have people that actually understand their own area more so than somebody just coming in from one of those bigger parts of the rural community.
So for me, I think, again, it just goes back to understanding our issues. And in my experience, because I did start out on our tribal council, and so there is a lot of contention with some things between the surrounding communities, specifically things like the irrigation district and water issues. And our tribe holds senior water rights, and so sometimes the irrigation district doesn't have the right amount of water, and some people have misconceptions about how the tribe obtained these rights and all these sort of things. And so for me, actually, and I do know my community really well, you know, I was raised there, I did have to go to school there, I played sports with their kids. You know, we have these relationships that stem from my childhood. So for me, I actually am not late because my campaigning school did train me well. But I do actually show up to the houses of these well-known Republicans, of these conservative people, and I did grow up in a rural community, so if someone was to open the door with a pistol, it wouldn't alarm me, and I would probably talk about it with them, you know, because I am from this community. But it is to find these overlapping issues, and it is to understand where they're coming from too, and then have this conversation. And again, for me, it means I have to show up, I have to humanize myself. I have to look them in the face and say, yes, this young woman of color from the tribe understands your irrigation district and your water issues, and I do hear you, and I do care about you, and we are a community, and have those conversations, even to keep, you know, that's just how you have to do it, in my opinion, in my community, and every community is different.
Yeah. So in our county, our district, something that I started early on, which my staff, I think, is still bewildered about and sometimes question, and probably rightly so. I have my council of Bubbas, and they're guys and gals who I grew up fighting fire with, working on farms with, I think 3 of the 12 maybe vote for me, I don't ask. But if I needed a lung, they'd probably give you a lung, right? I never make it about a particular race, or for them, we play cards once a month or once every 2 months, and I bring up issues that to me are the core democratic issues: lunchbox issues, veterans issues. How are small businesses being, how are things working better or not better? Not from a state-only perspective, but just to listen. And again, these are not folks that ask for their vote, but they're people who give me great insight and are generally surprised when we actually take some of their input and actually do something. But it is, again, an eclectic bunch that a lot of them are farmers, and they have a particular perspective, and I'm not going to try to change their perspective, but I try to learn from them. And the fact that I do that, I think, does inform the policy, and I think it does actually help build that sense of community.
So the next question is, candidates with larger districts, such as statewide candidates, often focus on the major cities where they can get the most votes. In Oregon, we know campaigns can tend to be kind of Portland-centric. So how do we get support from these campaigns in more rural areas, and in turn, how can we help support those candidates?
I think it's important to let these candidates who, as I've seen in Oregon's case, only campaign in 7 counties, apparently, remind them that rural voters vote. They vote in almost every election. Because what happens, whether it be at the local level or in Salem, truly affects them more. And then it's also important to remind them that if people running for statewide office who have larger name recognition or are better known are coming to those communities, that's going to help Democrats in those rural communities. The effect from the top of the ticket down will help them get another vote or two, or vice versa. If the statewide candidate comes to a rural area, they can go around with that local candidate who can introduce them to the right people in the community, introduce them to voters, and they can really benefit and kind of work off of each other that way. Knocked that out of the park on this.
So not all rural areas are alike, and in Oregon, rural communities closer to Portland face very different challenges than those closer to the Idaho border, for example. How can rural communities work together while recognizing and being respectful of their differences?
I'm kind of in a one-note Sally here, but you got to build up those organizations through the infrastructure, whatever it may be. Maybe it isn't the county party infrastructure, although I hope it is, because that makes things nice. But work with the communities on the ground that are doing the good work, and make sure everybody's got a seat at the table when you're making programmatic decisions early on in campaigns. We used to have we called it the Farmers Caucus. It was 3 counties, each run by a farmer. Each county chair was a farmer, and they would meet quarterly. Their county parties would meet monthly, so they could actually make decisions together. This was in the northwest corner of our state. But then we had our southeast folks who had built their own caucus of similar, it wasn't the farmers, a lot of them were actually teachers, which was pretty neat. But they all actually met through a rural caucus at our state conventions, our state committee meetings, and our summits like this one. So looking for those opportunities to work together and bounce ideas off one another, but then taking it home and making sure you've got a good representation of what the organizations in your community are actually concerned with, working within the progressive ecosystem, or the ecosystem of folks that align on most of your issues, right? That may not be 100% of them, but finding ways to build relationships in your community, and then it's still valuable for them all to meet at some point and bounce ideas off one another, because they're dealing with similar geographic type issues, right? But not all the issues that their voters care about are the same. So look for those opportunities for them to work collectively in their own regions, but also provide that space for them to meet and bounce ideas off one each other, as often as possible.
So I think that those types of relationships are critical. One of the things that I think, or at least one of the reasons I'm trying to play a larger role in the House now in policy development, is I have a belief that even though the specifics on the ground are different, the realities are different as you get farther away from Portland. There are ways, if you have a principle-based lens, that you can tie different policies maybe but through the same value set. So for example, guaranteed opportunity. Specific bills that go to the idea that we're supposed to, as a society, ensure that the next generation has the skills and training to be successful. That may mean something very different in Burns, Oregon than it does in perhaps Lynn County or Coos Bay or Portland. But if we can share a subset of major arc ideas and then have specific policies that we work as a team to pass, some may not sound important to Portland, but they're really important out in Paisley. Can we find a way to actually build that vision and actually explain our ideology, explain our aspirations through specific policies that are actually grounded in local concerns? And that's one of the things that I'm hoping that we could do as Democrats, because right now in Oregon there is this myth that, well, it's a blue state and we don't have to worry about it, we can sit on our laurels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That ain't exactly how parties last long, and I don't necessarily think that we are one Democratic Party right now. So my hope is that through an approach that has principle-based policies that are, again, tailorable, we can have at least a new conversation that maybe puts rural aspects and urban aspects as clearly an important identification, but not as the most important identification. And I think because ultimately when you look at Oregon's political culture, we are far more libertarian than any of us want to admit. And there are ways we can actually play upon that if we approach it the right way.
I mean, I think there's two different answers here. There's an answer I could give if the goal was electability. And then there's an answer I give of what do we actually want changing our electeds to change? What do we actually want? We actually want change. And so for me, it just comes back again to having these conversations where, yes, we need to find the things we overlap on. But again, I want to bring some urgency to these things for the communities who aren't voting, for the communities who aren't showing up, because we've been let down time and time again. I was a representative of a tribe. So I had to learn all of this federal policy, I had to learn all of this state, local government, all of these things, the way we interact. My representative, my senators, they don't have to learn anything about me. They don't have to learn anything about my government, and it is exhausting. So it's hard because I understand electability, I understand trying to recruit, I understand not being too aggressive in order to recruit more people. But there's always things being left out when we're doing that. The reason I talked about my civic teacher at the beginning is because it wasn't just, you know, everyone deserves to have an opinion. Yes, it's important everyone feels included, but at some point in my life, what I needed was for adults to say, the things this person is saying are not okay. The things that you're taught to accept in this community are not true, and you are not less than human, and you are equal. And you don't have to always just be on their side and find the ways that you can agree, because what's more important is the things you don't agree on. Because that's where it's going to show change for my community. That's where it's going to show change for the people who aren't in this room, the people who aren't registered, the other people in the community that we're trying to recruit, that we're trying to inspire. So it's different answers. You know, it's really, this is a complicated thing. Because what are we really doing here? Are we just trying to get people elected? Or are we trying to actually change people's daily lives? Because there's a difference.
Can I ask Carina to follow up? Just
Sure.
a sec. What do you wish? What do you want us local organizers, Jefferson, Crook, Deschutes, to know? Where are we falling short for your community, and how can we do better?
Did you all hear the
Very
question?
specifically.
She was asking, what does Carina want the local organizers to know that can help them better serve those communities that have been underserved?
To try and spread the wealth out. To try and spread the human capital, the financial capital, to, I mean, and there's already things initiated. You know, I was recruited for Emerge Oregon. I was recruited for all these things to get me this experience. But we are a tribe of 5,000 people. So to have to be an attorney, an educator, a policymaker, all of these things in order to just hold the line, not even to make progress, but to hold the line on all that we have right now, it's overwhelming. So to just recruit people of color, and there is an issue between the Mexican community and the Native community, we're not connected. Even that organizing I'm struggling with. And that's why I say in this party, because these spaces, these conversations, finding more people, training more people of color and lifting them up, and we are figuring it out. You know, we don't have every answer. We can't be a candidate immediately, but be intentional that we're gonna train you in this because we want you to be a candidate, because we understand representation matters, because we understand the complexities of all these things. And it's an uncomfortable process, and you don't always agree, but that's what change is. It's uncomfortable, and there's friction. So I guess, and marches, and events, you know, there's so much that happens in Bend. Have them in Madras, you know, go out. Even if there's not a lot of people showing up, it's because there's, you know, when I was 15 years old and I went to Central Oregon Democrats, we like hid. We would like have meetings, and you know, and there wasn't very, so just, we're there, man, we're on the line, it's starting to shift, I feel it out here in rural Oregon, but we have to be present, we have to inspire people, we have to lift up real people from these communities who can really connect and change people, and make them believe in this party, and make them believe in the things that we know are possible, if we can just all come together.
Finally getting a little down in the weeds, in a lot of rural areas, especially in CD2, the good majority of nonpartisan elections are determined in the May primary. This creates a very different dynamic and expectation than in other parts of the state and in partisan elections. What advice would you offer to those working to recruit candidates and helping their campaigns, especially knowing that these candidates have 7 months from now until their campaign is most likely completed?
You can tell them they're going to run a shorter campaign than everybody else. And I think it's important, building the bench is so important in rural areas, and in red areas, and in places where you don't have a lot of Democrats. And when you elect a Democrat to a city council position, a county commission position, a school board position, you know you're electing somebody who cares about issues within the community, who's not just doing it to sit on another board, who's doing it for the meager paycheck, but who's doing it because, you know, their child was wrong, they were wrong in school. There's something going wrong with their land and nobody's doing anything about it. They're gonna make a difference, they're gonna listen to you, and from there you can start to change the community because you have a Democrat on that board. And then those other 7 months, or after the primary, they can just go meet more voters because they know they're gonna get elected.
So, yeah. So I have a very mixed view about nonpartisan races. I think everything below county and below should be. And there are areas around the state that really don't like that idea. But I happen to believe 2 things about local government. One is it's a great teacher. And if we want to build a bench, we should actually build a bench and have people experience how to solve problems that, yes, are informed by ideologies, and certainly it doesn't take too long to figure out which party a person may be, but isn't inherently a partisan exercise. So, again, I've offered legislation to make county commissions across the state and below all nonpartisan. Surprise, surprise, hasn't gotten past jump. But I actually think it would be better for the system if it did. The second thing is, as far as the May to the end of the year thing, I'm a big believer that if your election is settled up in May, then you should, again, continue to help folks who are running for other offices that are not in May, but use that time between May and January or whenever it is that you're sworn in to learn the job. Sometimes, in our environment, it's the winning that's the most important thing, and then people lose focus. I don't want you to win, I want you to succeed, and I want you to govern. And if you know you're going to get that job, and you know that there's not going to be a spoiler that comes into a write-in campaign or something like that, number one, that possibility always gives you an excuse to go out and continue to have conversations, but in a less threatening environment. And number two, it gives you time to actually have conversations with folks that you may not be able to have after you raise your right hand and are then not able to send emails in certain groups because, oh my goodness, it's a decision chain. It's an opportunity to basically get ready for the job. So I think that we have this very strange situation in Oregon where some counties are partisan and some are not at different levels. But I would guess or say that try to get involved, try to learn how to govern where there isn't an overtly partisan perspective, see how you can work together, build relationships, and use the time available to learn the job.
In terms of the piece here about what advice would you offer to those who are doing the candidate recruitment or who are working on campaigns? Raise your hand if you're somebody in the room that falls under, right? You're helping to recruit candidates or you're helping to train them. or you're knocking doors for them, hopefully. Hopefully everybody can raise their hand for that, right? Everybody up, yep. These campaigns are tough because they are nonpartisan, so it limits some of the resources that we can give. However, in 2017, we recruited the most municipal candidates we'd ever had in Kansas history. We had over 700 across the state, and that was when it was so key, again, why not Sally, to have those organizations out in the state, because they may not know that somebody's a Democrat, but again, I was a data director. I do. I know if they're a Democrat, and I can tell you if they are. So if you're saying the PTA president is really great, and I think they'd make an excellent school board member, I don't know if they're a Democrat, but I'd like to be helpful to them, and you want to know, you also have a good data infrastructure here in Oregon. I bet you they can tell you if they're a Democrat.
Yeah.
So that is helpful. We can also pull lists of these Democrats and share them with you, so that you can call through, or just look at your own community and say, oh, I know them and I know they'd be a great candidate. Who knew they were a Democrat? Call them, ask them to volunteer, and then ask them to run for office. So there are ways that we can still be helpful in these nonpartisan races without having to make it a public specter, right? So look for those opportunities.
I apologize, I want to reattack because what she's saying is absolutely right. It was not known, this has not been said, or at least I don't think it was reported very much, but in this last election cycle, Portland schools and Beaverton schools got an increase in the Democrats on their boards. But Salem schools, Salem Kaiser, which is the second largest in the state of Oregon, actually went down to 1 progressive out of 7.
Wow.
And not just did a non-progressive or 2 win, but one that brags openly about carrying into board meetings, which again is not unusual in Polk and Marion that people carry, but it's a little unusual to have a chair of a meeting say that it's right in her purse and she can reach it pretty quickly. And then to question the importance of teaching such things as diversity in schools or having actual health services for students. The Right to Life folks actually, and some of the folks on the other side of our, the friends on the other side of the aisle, they see those seats as opportunities. And when we leave them vacant or we don't seize upon that, we are not contesting ground that we should. And we are not getting our folks trained in that experience like we should. And it's critical at this moment when people are quite frankly questioning whether a republic can survive, that we show how you govern. And the other team certainly is going to be fighting every chance they get, and you need to know that. And that's in the urban areas as well as the rural areas.
Bench building is huge for them, so we have to make it huge for us too.
So now we have a few minutes set aside for some questions from so I will take the microphone after this one. We'll start right here with Arlen Stoyer.
My question to the panel is, how would you go about building support for candidates who would like to become a delegate for the national convention?
Okay.
I'm not.
So I think 2 things, and I will defer to those that know better. I've never been a delegate from the state of Oregon, though I have gone to conventions and I've known a few, but I was never a delegate. I think number 1, get involved in campaigns and get known by people, and number 2, reach out to the leadership of the party and the state organization so that they can inform you on what kinds of experiences would help you prepare for that opportunity. Beyond that, no idea. But I know that Marion County Democrat over there, who's not in perhaps the county that you live right now, would certainly listen to you right now, and I think other people would certainly listen if you're interested.
And I'll just briefly go to that one too, because I was a delegate in 2016. I was Oregon's youngest ever delegate, and I proudly went for Hillary Clinton. And it was, I think, a lot of what helped me get to that is exactly what Paul was talking about. I got involved in the campaign early. I went to their first office opening, which was in Portland, so not a short drive for me, but you know, it was worth it. And then when the campaign was over, I had met, you know, the state director and our constituency outreach director, people who could speak to my involvement in the campaign and my dedication to in that case, to Hillary Clinton, who would then be willing to be my endorsers and speak to other people who they knew would likely be attending the state convention or the district convention and help support me that way. So definitely get involved when you can. The campaigns are usually pretty good. Hopefully this year won't be different in getting people out, especially as we get closer to the primary in the other areas, even if it's not necessarily in the Madras area. They'll probably have some CD2 hopefully, but definitely get people into campaigns and start building up something so that they can show when they're running for a delegate, yes, I am involved in the party. I'm not just someone who wants to go, you know, halfway across the country to be on TV. Actually, I'm dedicated to this party, to this candidate, to this campaign. That's really important. So I'm going to go to the other side of the room now. Go over here.
Me? Yeah. Oh, okay. So, hi everybody, my name's Caroline Fitchett, and I'm a volunteer. I've been a campaign field director, organizer, campaign manager, fundraiser. And I wanted to just tell people about this new organization because it's about bench building here in Central Oregon, specifically targeting Jefferson, Crook, and Deschutes County. And in my work and some of the other founders, we found that working on local races, nonpartisan local races, there was this huge challenge of A, money, B, strategic support, C, staffing, and then D, if we actually really want to have working parents run for office, folks from non-traditional backgrounds run for office, they need additional supports, especially in these local races, such as child care, support with family meals. So this organization, which is called Strengthening Central Oregon, if anybody is thinking for running for local office in the Tri-County area, reach out to us because we will hopefully have money and support for your candidacy and campaigns. And hopefully other areas in rural Oregon will be doing the same thing.
Other questions? Go to Pat.
Pat Malone, and I've been an active Democrat for a couple decades, and there was mentioned about the Marion County School Board and Salem School Board, that because nobody was paying enough attention, that things went the wrong way. And I guess my question is the county party a good place to make lists of available positions and then do some recruiting, and I guess the other part of it is how to maintain that effort. So I'll stop there.
So I'll start and then. Good question, Pat. So I'll start and then hand it down the line. What I think is important is in this particular case in Salem Kaiser, we had great candidates. We actually had a lot of Marion County and Polk County Democrats out there helping. We had a lot of affiliate organizations happening. But what happened was that, again, school board elections are not generally at the top of the list of most people, especially on right to life and on NARALs in that particular paradigm. School boards aren't necessarily seen or weren't at that point as a priority. And what I think would have been helpful, or what we need to do in the future, is that our ally organizations and the county leadership have more coordination, saying, look, this race is actually getting out of whack. We need assistance from somewhere because it goes beyond our normal resources to be able to do it. I don't believe, and I want to be very clear, I don't believe anybody at the local level was caught sleeping, and I don't think anybody statewide wasn't busy doing something. I just think that what the other team is really smart at doing, because quite frankly they've had the same funders for all their different organizations, the Koch brothers, etc. They just pour money in where they think that they can actually have an advantage. And we did finally get support, but it came too late. So I think more coordination between the county chairs and the allies to these types of events, saying, hey, look, this month we're seeing more of these types of mailers coming, we're seeing more of this push from this particular group. Can the counter group or can some other group help us on this? And I think we can avoid some of those problems. That'd be my suggestion.
exactly what I was gonna say.
Frank, we'll come right here. Frank?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Frank Smith, and I've organized in 22 states. I've been working on a congressional campaign for 56 years. Nobody said anything about senior centers as far as rural communities, but I've found them to be hugely helpful in many of the places I've worked. I've stopped private prisons, 65 of them, in those 22 states. So, and most of them were rural communities. Second thing was, I was curious, as maybe Cheyenne can answer this, I couldn't understand how Charisse won so easily. And maybe, I mean, we're talking about a plus something. In that district, I just can't imagine it, that she did so well. Especially being who she is, somebody who is just not conventional candidate. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. First, it wasn't easy. It was tough. But that district is trending the right way, thankfully. It's full of people who were moderate Republicans at one point, thinking that, what the heck is this guy doing, you know, in office about Donald Trump. And they organized really hard, really locally to make sure that, I mean, they hit, man, the doors that they hit in that district in 2018 was just off the charts. It was incredible. So it was the hard work of those organizations and her campaign coordinating well within her district that really, I mean, blew them out of the water. I will also say, though, we've talked a lot about the local races. In 2017, those local candidates, that was where most of that 700 came from. So they were working on building the infrastructure that was going to be needed in 2018 early in 2017. So it carried over. Also, Charisse is just an awesome person. I hope you get to talk to her, and I hope you get to hear from her tonight. And she's a diverse candidate. We had a whole bunch of people running, but man, she connected with communities that didn't feel like they had been connected with in a long, long time. And
she had a tough primary too.
She did. She had a tough primary. I can't speak to the primary because I work for the party, but she worked hard to build those relationships in communities that had felt underrepresented for a very long time. She showed up where other people weren't showing up, especially Kevin Yoder. So they worked really hard for a long time to make sure the infrastructure was there for that district. And that's how they blew them out of the water. You should have seen 2017 too. People were like, these numbers are crazy. And it's because they worked so hard for so long to build the infrastructure.
I have one more if I just, I've done voter registration in minority communities. You should be able to speak to that, really. And especially because of and you too, because of the voter repression in South Dakota and in North Dakota even more than that, even in Kansas.
Chris Kobach.
So
yeah.
Can you talk about that?
And just so that you all, make sure you all heard, he was asking about voter registration in underrepresented communities.
In South Dakota, and just like in North Dakota as well, the tribal vote is so important. And those communities, especially in both the Dakotas, have been totally forgotten. South Dakota is a prime example of, I'm from Western South Dakota, and all of Western South Dakota is stolen land. And we decide every election cycle not to respect the people whose land it is. And part of that is taking away their right to vote. We make it extremely difficult for them to get to voting locations, to register to vote, and even setting the dates of location and the dates of elections. We made it a big effort in the last election cycle in South Dakota to reach out to these communities early, to invest a large amount of money and time into going to reservation communities, to hiring organizers from the reservations. You can't go in, I can't go knock a door in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Nobody's gonna listen to me. White guys have screwed them for way too long in South Dakota. No one's gonna listen. So it's important to get members from that community to go into those areas. And just as important as voter registration is, voter education. you have to, when you're going to communities where people don't often vote, you have to let them know why it's important to vote. And then in a lot of these situations, we've given them that spiel in the past of why it's important to vote and then not followed through on the promises. Don't promise anything unless you know you can come through with it. Say you're gonna speak up for them and say you're gonna get the job done, but listen to them too. And then, you know, work with the people in those communities.
I mean, this is a hard question because I feel like we need to take a step back and understand why hope has been lost in the whole party system in general and communities of color, and that's where it's going to be. And I do feel like the Oregon Democratic Party is really starting to fully understand that it's not, you know, oh, we need to get these voter numbers up and what are they going to do for us? It's how can we make sure that we are being authentic to them. Because there are a lot of, and I could go on and on and on for a whole nother hour all about this. But the thing is it's hard because we have no choice but to conform into the system existing today. And even everything, every single thing about this country right now is colonization. I've gone so deep into law, so deep into policy, always looking what was the intent, all these things even designed to help us. The intent was because we were incapable. The intent was because we were less than human. Oh, they don't farm, they're less than human. Use the doctrine of discovery, take the land. We're still right. And now I have to sit on boards, I have to sit on councils where we're preserving agricultural land, comparing it to natural lands. That's not true. And every time I have to sit down anywhere in any space and debate my ancestors' knowledge and our existence, we're already debating whether or not I'm human. And so when the Democratic Party is a place where even tribal issues are still so misunderstood, and I mean, I'm not even getting started on the Mexican community, because I don't represent them. I am still working on building those relationships, and that's what's happening between even communities of color. There's that disconnect, because we're just beaten down into surviving. I was a social worker, I was an early education teacher, I know what families are facing, and their priorities are not voting, their priorities are not understanding ballot measures, their priorities are feeding their families every day. So we have to really transform into a party that is truly going to represent and respect every member it says it's going to. And sometimes that means admitting that this system is not the right system.
So then one more question here from Cheyenne.
Thank you. Cheyenne, Corporal County, also my state representative. Very proud to have him in the house.
Proud to have you on the council.
Thank you. What none of you have touched on, Carina referenced it. We know how to do everything you've told us already. We do everything you've told us already. What's missing from this dialogue is a representative from the DPO and from the House and the Senate fundraising PACs, the purse strings. We need the purse strings. How do we win races when the purse strings will not represent or not pay for an unproven candidate?
I also come from the land of the Koch brothers, so I feel your pain here. We will never have as much money as they do, so we have to have the volunteer infrastructure. However, I talked a little bit earlier about that DPI number. We have to run candidates, even though we call these emerging districts most of the time. We're running candidates. We know maybe this time is probably not going to be the time, but we're increasing that DPI because at some point that number helps to expend resources. The DLCC starts looking at those legislative races when you hit about a 40 mark, because that means that you're really close to closing that margin,
We don't even
right?
get the acknowledgement that this might not be the right time or this might not be the time. We're not getting the acknowledgement at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, many state parties are like working to recruit. The county party infrastructure is working to recruit, right? But there's, at some point too, I mean, it's gotta be the grassroots energy that's going on in that area. And, you know, you don't just have to talk about how important it is to vote, but how important it is to donate. You can use the leverage of, we're not gonna get any outside money. We need it from our community. However, you can reach out to districts outside of yours if your community is not one that can be just throwing their funds to a candidate, right? Reach outside of that district to ones that can and explain to them how this helps all the way up and down the ballot, right? If they were to donate to this candidate, that would increase the margin for every other candidate up and down the ballot. I'm not gonna sit here and try and tell you that we'll give you some money, right? I mean, I don't know that. I don't control the purse either. I wish that I did. I'd have a lot of down ballot races receiving some money, if so. But it comes down to the resources. So building the volunteer infrastructure. I mean, we don't have the money that they have, but we do have the people. We have more people now than ever. We have such movement going on. This is the way that we build that infrastructure. Build the volunteer infrastructure. Prove that the district is viable by continuing to run candidates and increasing that DPI or the margin of victory, getting closer and closer, and then you start getting money trickling down because you realize that that district is viable and flippable. It's not right away, but it's something you
And
can
just
do.
to be clear, I'm not talking about Paul's district, the neighboring
Can I follow
district.
up on that?
But
Go ahead, yeah.
that's not real though.
So, let me take a shot and then
Yeah.
respond, please. So, to our guests, Oregon has a few rules in place that make no sense here, and they certainly would not make sense for someone coming. We are the Wild West. We do not have campaign limits. My House seat, which pays about now, I think we got a raise, is it $38,000, $40,000 now a year, I think?
With the session.
Yeah, during, thank you, good clarification. It cost the last time on our side, $550,000 of the campaign plus the IE, probably another $100,000, so close to $700,000 for a job that pays about $40,000 a year. I say that because that's in the swingiest, or at least at the time it was the swingiest district. We've held it, and every time they've tried to take it back. One of the things that is the dynamics in the state of Oregon, because the money is so big, and there aren't limits, is that allied groups have a little bit more say in terms of targeting of races than the party does. And the DPO, while it gets some money, the House Future PAC side and the Senate Democratic Leadership Fund, they play a larger role in candidate support than the party itself does. And quite frankly, the allies, especially the Big Seven, have an even more disproportionate role. One of the things that many of us have been talking about for years, and again, because the Koch brothers ramped things up in 2010 and started putting money in state legislative races, we've not been able to do, is to put a pot of money that's dedicated specifically to futures races, so we don't rob it. So when things are really tight and we put all the money out, it's that reserve we never touch that we put into races we know likely won't win, but can build relationships, can build the base, and basically be the setting of the day. The problem is races are so expensive now that it's gotten beyond it's almost like Lucy and Charlie Brown. Every time we get close again, it moves because the other side finds more money in here. What we do need, and this is maybe something the thought is, through the national organization, through especially the online presence, if there could be some kind of match program, so you put out there as a state or the national organization saying, hey states, we know that this is important. If you'll put some money aside for these emerging districts, we'll match it. You might actually get the state and the counties to be willing to do that because they're not trying to do it themselves. And I know from firsthand, if the other side actually felt there were threats in rural Polk County where we should have had a good race and have had a good race and never quite gotten support, in perhaps some of the areas that the other side thinks are their seats forever but really aren't because of population changes, it would change the dynamic. But it's almost playing game of chicken. We're not going to go there until we get some help. So I know this is above your pay grade. I'm throwing it out there. It would be very helpful, I think, if the DNC said, look, we know that this is an issue. We'll put some money aside as a match and see if you guys can match it and see what happens. Yeah. Just a suggestion.
So at the national level of the DNC, we do have kind of a small program that does somewhat focus on that. It's called SPIF, the State Partnership Innovation Fund. States parties submit grants to us, and we've got $10 million set aside each election cycle. And they submit grants, and this is honestly one of my biggest roles, is speaking up for the states to try to get them funding. We've got Idaho here in the back of the room. We're trying to get them some rural funding. And Brad Martin, the executive director of the DPO, just submitted his SPIF grant as well. And the lead focus of that is rural. And getting a rural organizer out there to be able to go into those areas. Unfortunately, our top priority is not just giving money out and having those extra funds, but this is one way state parties have talked to the national group and just said, hey, we need some additional funding, we need an investment in these areas because it's not as red as everybody thinks it is, and it's not these positions that everybody thinks they can hold. and Democrats need to do a better job of competing at state legislative levels and below, and that's what we're trying to do with this program.
So, I'd like to, never let it go by without asking for something more. So, one of the things that I know when we were talking about 10 years ago about something called campaign in a box, basically how do you get, for areas that we're not going to probably put in tier 1, but at least you can get a team, you can get those things. In Oregon, because of the finance stuff, if there were specific grants or staff through the DPO that could actually do the C&E filings for local candidates that are above or below a certain level in terms of total amount, I know that would take weight off candidates because they don't want to have to go to jail and get these fines. And the second piece is a website or web support that is plug and play. So if you decide to run, we get you in there, we say we're going to help you with the C&E, we're going to help you with the website so you can have an online presence and you're not going to have to worry about every night doing the C&E report yourself. That might actually be, in lieu of at least upfront money, it might be one something to help. So just something to think about.
100%.
Just want to take a minute to plug some of the trainings that we do that focus on this type of thing. Our T3 program, any T3ers in the house, train the trainer. Hey, there we go.
Finished, thank you.
Yay, good. B2. She just finished T3
What is
B2. So it is an online training program. The spring one is the big one. It's a 12-part 6-week course where we focus on several different aspects of grassroots campaigning, one of which is fundraising and finance. Of course, with the national program, we can't touch on everybody's individual issue, but part of the goal is to build the relationships either with you and the state party, or because after each of these programs, we send that full list to the state party and we talk about ways that they can engage. We tell them the questions that we get via email or whatever from these programs so that states can start addressing what we're hearing from people. But yes, sign up on our website. Go to democrats.org, which is the DNC website. The Take Action tab has trainings under it. And you can go to sign up for our monthly newsletter. I promise not to spam you. It's one monthly newsletter. It is long, but it has links to sign up for all these different types of training programs. And I hope you'll be there for T3 in the spring. 12-part 6-week course. You do not have to watch it when they air. I'm gonna say that right now. You can watch it on the weekend. You can watch it whenever. You have a month and a half to complete the program, pretty much. So it's well worth it. We get into some of this stuff. So where we can't provide money, I'm here to provide support on the infrastructure building side, the training side, right?
Where did you say that you find that on the website?
Yeah, or you can text training to 43367. Training to 43367. It'll ask you for a few things. All I really care about is that you respond to the first one, because it gets me your email so I can put you on that newsletter. So training.
Working at the DPO can get you any.
Yay! Candy's over there. She can help. And then also the website democrats.org. Take action. Thanks for being a T3. I love being out in the real world. Sorry.
Okay, well, we are right up against our time, and I want to be sure that you can get up to your 2:30 panels. But thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to our panelists for doing this. Just out of curiosity, if you are a candidate or an elected in a rural area, can you please raise your hand?
Bless you.
Thank you all so much. So thank you again, everybody, and I'll see you later today.